Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Nadia Kristanovich, and I am an After Stroke Coordinator with March of Dimes Canada and the After Stroke Program. I will be your moderator today, and I'm joining you from Surrey, BC. I would like to welcome everyone to our second Stroke Awareness Month webinar. The topic of this webinar is stroke education and self-management. Why is it important? I would like to now share a land acknowledgement. Throughout my life, I have had the privilege of living on and experiencing many beautiful lands across what is now known as Canada. These places have shaped who I am, and I want to acknowledge and honor the Indigenous peoples who have lived on, cared for, and protected these lands long before I ever arrived. I was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and the historic homeland of the Métis Nation. As a child, I spent many summers on my father's family farm in Norquay, Saskatchewan, within Treaty 4 territory, home to the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the Métis Nation. I carry fond memories of this land, catching frogs, exploring fields, swinging from tire swings, and helping with the harvest. For most of my life, I've lived in White Rock and Surrey, British Columbia, on the unceded and traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Katzie, Kwantlen, and Semiahmoo First Nations. My childhood was filled with time outdoors, beachcombing, walking the ravines, and exploring with my best friend who lived on the Semiahmoo Reserve. In my young adulthood, I traveled and lived in many places around the world, but I was always drawn back to British Columbia. The oceans, forests, lakes, and mountains here have always felt like home. This is a place I've long called the best on earth. Today, I am proud and deeply grateful to live, learn, and raise my children on these Indigenous lands. As a guest and settler, I continue to reflect on what it means to live responsibly and respectfully here. I am committed to learning about the histories, cultures, and rights of the First Peoples of these territories and to honor their voices, stories, and ongoing presence. Although we may be joining from many different regions, each of us is situated on a land with a unique Indigenous history. I encourage everyone to take a moment to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples connected to the land where you are and to reflect on how we can support their autonomy, leadership, and ongoing connection to their territories. Sorry, one sec. Okay. And if you have any questions throughout the course of this webinar, please put them in the Q&A, and we will try and answer them after all the presentations are complete. The recording of this webinar will be made available on our Ask an Expert YouTube channel and will be available in about a week. The slides for this webinar and the webinar recording link will be shared with attendees. I would now like to welcome Dr. Brodie Sakakibara. Dr. Sakakibara is an associate professor at the University of British Columbia in the Department of Occupational Science and Occupational Therapy. His research focuses on secondary prevention of after-stroke and virtual rehabilitation. He is located in Kelowna, British Columbia, is married, and has 3 children aged 16, 14, and 11. When he is not working, he's driving his kids to their activities, including dance, hockey, and judo. Welcome, Dr. Sakakibara.
Thank you, Nadia, for that introduction. I am just going to share my slides here, so just bear with me for a second. Can everyone see my slides? Great. So thanks again, Nadia. It's a pleasure for me to be here. And thank you to the March of Dimes and Suzanne Smith Bailey for the invitation to be here with you today. My discussion today is going to be on self-management and secondary prevention after stroke. And I'm just going to start off with a little bit of background here. So after 55 years of age, it's estimated that around 20% of people will have a stroke. Now, due to population aging combined with increases in stroke risk factors such as diabetes and obesity, the number of people who've had a stroke in Canada is expected to exceed 720,000 individuals by 2038, or over the next 15 years. And for several reasons, this increasing numbers is concerning. And one of the key reasons for concern, which is my area of research, has to do with secondary events after stroke, because people who have had a stroke also have a high risk for secondary events. So, for example, in terms of hospital readmissions, 49% of people who have had a stroke will be readmitted to hospital within 1 year. 94% of people who have had a stroke are susceptible to multimorbidity. It's common for people who have had a stroke to also report having diabetes or heart disease, as an example. And perhaps most concerning has to do with secondary strokes or recurrent events. And it's reported that as many as 16 people will experience a second stroke within 1 year, and 33% will experience a secondary stroke within 5 years of their initial event. And for these reasons, I really feel as though there has to be more support for people after they've been discharged from hospital to ensure their long-term health and wellness. Now, when we talk about secondary prevention, we have to understand what the stroke risk factors are and then develop strategies to try to reduce that risk. Now, if we consider risk factors for stroke, in a large interstroke study of around 6,000 individuals from 22 countries, these 10 risk factors that I identify here were found to be associated with 90% of the risk of stroke. And as you can see, we can categorize these factors into health behaviors, which I've circled in red. So things like physical activity, diet, nutrition, smoking and alcohol intake, as well as stress management and management of depressive symptoms. And the other risk factors that I haven't circled are more metabolic or biologic type risk factors. So things like blood pressure, glucose intolerance, as well as cholesterol. And we can organize these factors into a causal pathway. And at the beginning, as you can see here, are health behaviors. And these health behaviors have a large influence on the metabolic or the biologic risk factors and eventually stroke and stroke prevention. And so if we can better manage our health behaviors and metabolic risk factors, this will reduce our risk of stroke. In fact, in that large interstroke study that I mentioned, the authors concluded that increasing physical activity and eating a healthy diet, combined with reducing or lowering our blood pressure, could substantially reduce the burden of stroke. Now, I'm just going to have a quick discussion on health behaviors. So despite the high likelihood of recurrent stroke and other secondary events after initial stroke, and knowledge that many of the stroke risk factors may be improved by healthy behaviors, many individuals who have had a stroke still report to have health conditions and health behaviors that can be better managed. Although it might be expected that these individuals with a history of a stroke would want to reduce their risk of secondary events, it appears easier said than done because evidence suggests that many individuals are continuing with health behaviors and have health conditions that may have contributed to their stroke in the first place. And this puts them at high risk for secondary events and other health conditions. And so the question is, or a key question is, how can we let this happen? How is this possible? And I think this quote here sheds some light on what's happening here. So comprehensive national audits of stroke care show alarming levels of neglect in terms of chronic disease management. Basically, what this quote is saying is that after discharge from hospital and once people are back at home living in the community, there are very few resources for them to access to support them in terms of their long-term management of their stroke signs and symptoms. Even though this quote was made in 2008, it's still very relevant today, still very true today. And I think there are two interrelated points that might explain this neglect. The first is that we have a very acute focused health system. And as a result, integration of chronic care within this system has been slow because the health system really emphasizes the treatment of episodic and acute events rather than the long-term patient interactions that are characteristic of chronic care needs. The second reason, I think, has to do with stroke being traditionally viewed as an acute event. And so much of the advances and successes, I would say, in stroke care have been on improving survival rates and returning people to independent community living. 83% of people who've had a stroke will survive, and 90% of people after receiving rehabilitation will be discharged back to the community for independent living. Now, while there's no question that stroke is an acute event, It also has devastating long-term chronic consequences, notably deficits in motor and sensory function, communication, as well as cognition. And these deficits pose serious barriers for people who have had a stroke to really effectively manage their health and well-being over time, particularly when there's a lack of support services after hospital discharge. And so if we tabulate some of the health outcomes at each stage of the stroke recovery continuum, so acute, rehabilitation, chronic care, the outcomes in the chronic or community phase of the recovery continuum are not as great as they are in the acute or rehabilitation phases. Fortunately, research suggests that around 80% of secondary events after stroke may be prevented through comprehensive self-management support, which is a great thing. This is great news. And self-management is defined as an individual's ability to manage the symptoms, treatment, physical and psychosocial consequences, and lifestyle changes that are inherent to living with a chronic disease. And importantly, self-management approaches involve the individual in their long-term management of their own health and maintenance of preventative habits. And self-management really relates to the tasks and activities that an individual must undertake to live well after having a stroke. And so a question is what needs self-managing? According to some of the seminal work by Kate Lorig, people with chronic conditions, including stroke, need to self-manage their medical needs, as well as health behaviors, emotions, and life roles. Or basically, people need to manage the risk factors that I previously identified in an earlier slide. Now, in order to effectively self-manage, what do people need? People need the knowledge, skills, as well as confidence and motivation. In terms of knowledge, people need to know the health risks of not managing their condition, as well as the benefits of effectively managing their disease or their condition. In terms of skills, people need self-management skills. So things like goal setting, action planning. People need to be able to set long-term goals for their health and wellness and develop shorter-term action plans that they can successfully accomplish that lead up to achieving their long-term goal. Individuals need to be able to make appropriate decisions to solve problems, as well as self-monitor their behaviors as well as metabolic risk factors, and also to use health resources effectively. In terms of confidence and motivation, individuals need the belief in their ability to manage their health as well as the motivation to manage their health. And if people have the belief and motivation, then the more likely they will be able to self-manage their after stroke. Now, some people will effectively self-manage on their own and live well with a high quality of life for a long time, but many will not. And it's these people who will require self-management support to develop the knowledge, skills, confidence, and motivation. And self-management support is the help given to people to enable them to manage their health and symptoms on a daily basis. And we provide self-management support via self-management support programs. And these programs, people receive education, coaching, motivational support to improve their knowledge, skills, self-management skills, as well as confidence and motivation so that they can manage their medical behavioral changes after having a stroke, their emotions, and life roles. And that's all I have for you today. And thank you again to the March of Dimes for having me today. And again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and I'll be happy to address them after the end of the panel discussion or panel presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sakakibara. I would now like to welcome Jasbir Gill, who is from Surrey, British Columbia. She is a stroke survivor. Jasbir currently lives with her 85-year-old mother, supporting her in her later years. Professionally, she works as a project manager. Jasbir has been involved in several programs at March of Dimes Canada and was an integral member of our Life After Stroke program working group. Welcome, Jasbir.
Thank you so much, Nadia. Thank you for the great introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Jasbir Gill, and I am a stroke survivor. Today, I would like to share my experience with the stroke recovery, specifically around education and self-management, two things which were very critical for my stroke journey. When I had my stroke, I didn't know what was coming. I had to figure out a lot of things on my own. And looking back, I realized how important it is for others to hear stories like mine. So it helps, even if it helps one person feel less isolated and a little bit more prepared, then I'm grateful to share my story. When I was discharged from the hospital and after my stroke, I honestly had no stroke education. My stroke occurred under very unique circumstances. No one told me what to expect when I got home. So I was dealing with some other aspects of my injuries and was left on my own to figure out what my stroke journey is going to be like. For example, I didn't even realize that I had lost peripheral vision in my eyes until I started noticing that I am not seeing people coming from my right side. I went to my doctor, and after various tests, we figured out that I had lost peripheral vision in the right side of both my eyes. No one had warned me what to expect, that vision loss could be something to look out for. It was uniquely what happened was a career counselor in my company, when I went back to work, mentioned that my company also gave me free mental health support as well. This mental health therapist understood what was happening, and she was the one who then referred me to CNIB and also actually referred me to Marcia Dimes. From then on, Marcia Dimes, I started getting invited to weekly and monthly calls with them, including one 6-week stroke recovery program, which was run by an amazing person, Joni. And that's how I slowly started building my network and my confidence. If I could go back and change just one thing, that would be, I wish a hospital had given me a packet to basically with some contact information, what to expect and who to call when I was in need. If you ask me what stroke education should look like, what to expect in terms of symptoms like mood swings, fatigue, and cognitive challenges, also a list of trusted organizations to call, where to look online with some contact information. Last but not least, encouragement that recovery is different for everybody and that it's okay to have a different path for recovery for everyone. Even a one-page pamphlet would have helped. Something that said, you may experience the following, here's who you will need to call. And that kind of early support would have saved me a lot of confusion and isolation. For me, self-management was something I had to learn very hard way. I was lucky in some aspects that I didn't have major physical disabilities, but certainly I had visual changes and cognitive challenges. I had to learn that I would have mood swings, that I'd get tired faster, and that sometimes my brain just won't work the way it used to work. Before my stroke, if I was tired, I could push through. But now, no, that just doesn't work anymore. And I was really hard on myself at first. I would be like, why can I not just do this? Eventually, my mental therapist tried to tell me that it's okay, take a step back, you can come back to it, walk away from it. And sure enough, she was right. I walk away from things now, and I come back after a few minutes, that things work. So that one mindset change made a huge difference for me. One of the most important things that I've learned, that every stroke is different. I think sometimes people tend to think that stroke is one single thing that but that's not the case at all. Every stroke journey is different and every recovery is unique. And whatever works for one person may not work for the other person. That's why it's very important that the support, whether it's from doctors, therapists, other stroke survivors, or family, is customized to that person's need. You can't use a one-size-fits-all approach for all stroke survivors. So what was the most valuable part of my recovery? It came through peer support. When I started attending those weekly and monthly calls with other stroke survivors through Marcia Dimes, it kind of became a community for me. And if one person didn't show up on the meeting, next week we would be asking, hey, is everything okay? You were missed. And so this was not just informative. This community became very supportive for me. And there were times when we would start a topic, and the real learning happened when the discussions were happening. So if I was struggling with something like I want to go out on my own and my family was not supportive of that, somebody would jump up with a suggestion and say, Why don't you try going with a friend for a short ride? Those kind of tips that made a huge difference in pretty much everybody that was on the call. Also, knowing that I was not the only one going through this helped me feel very normal. And it also gave me a lot of confidence and made me feel stronger. Stroke education and self-management have absolutely helped me create the life that I want to live. Through peer calls, the Ask the Expert sessions, which I actually still attend to date, they gave me tools, they gave me confidence. I saw what other people were doing, and I would ask myself, well, if they can't, maybe I can give it a try as well. One area that I still think is overlooked in support is going back to work. Asking for workplace accommodations can be really hard, especially if you have a manager who is not understanding. This is a piece that I hope more programs include in their future knowledge. I had the opportunity to contribute to the working group that developed the new education and self-management program. This initiative was designed to empower patients with practical knowledge and tools to better manage their care and themselves. Being involved in the creation of this material was incredibly rewarding for me. And also, I'm proud to see that it will now be shared more widely. So if I could offer one piece of advice to some newly person recovering from stroke, it would be get connected, reach out to March of Dimes or another organization like March of Dimes, and most of all, be patient with yourself, be your own good friend, and be kind and offer the advice to yourself what you would offer to somebody else. Again, stroke recovery isn't a straight line and it's not easy, but with the right education, the right support, and the right mindset, it is possible to rebuild your life. I hope by sharing my story, someone out there feels a little more seen, a little more informed, and a little more hopeful. You're not alone, and you don't have to do it alone. Thank you so much, Nadia.
Thank you, Jasbir, for sharing. That was wonderful and well-spoken. We would like to now introduce Doug Mitchell. Doug lives in London, Ontario, and is married to Tracy, who is his partner in their shenanigans together. Doug is also a stroke survivor. Prior to his stroke, Doug worked in a management position at General Motors. Doug is a wonderful ambassador of After Stroke at March of Dimes Canada and participates actively in many programs. Doug is also the author of Embracing 2.0. Keep an eye out for the link later on in our follow-up email. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you very much for that introduction. That was very good. Hi, family. I say that because all you stroke survivors, caregivers, and support individuals are family. I am Doug version 2.0, to be more specific, the author of Embracing 2.0, as you heard from Natalie. I've been empowered from so many March of Dimes programs. These programs helped me embrace my new life as it is today. My stroke occurred 5.5 years ago. I went to the hospital thinking I was having a heart attack. After a bunch of tests and CAT scans, the doctor came into my bedside and said, "Do you want the good news or do you want the bad news?" I said, "I'll take the good news." He explained I did not have a heart attack, but the more concerning point I've suffered 3 strokes at some point in the last 6 months since my last head MRI. This explains all the changes in my life that my wife and friends noticed. Remember, I was a different individual that the family couldn't figure out what was happening. So a stroke was sort of their final answer, and they could now help me. The ischemic strokes were caused by a hole in my heart that let the clots enter my brain and mess up 3 areas. Well, everybody, guess what? This was March 3rd, 2020, right in the throng of COVID shutdown. The hospital did not want me there, so they sent me home. It took 3 long, scary months before we heard anything from anyone in the medical field. Finally, after advocating for ourselves, we got a call from Parkwood Rehab Center in London. What a relief. They threw 7 experts at me for rehab. Again, guess what? The rehab would all be virtual. Parkwood was excellent, and they introduced me to my saving grace, March of Dimes Canada, also known as MODC. March of Dimes called me at home before my last week of virtual rehab and introduced me to my stroke coordinator. She introduced me to many supportive March of Dimes virtual programs and support groups. Yes, survivors, just like me, that I can talk to virtually. What a relief. I guess it was in around about 2 years, I got introduced to a Living with Stroke program developed by the Heart and Stroke and delivered by staff at the March of Dimes. To my surprise, my after stroke coordinator ended up being my facilitator of my Living with Stroke group. What an amazing program to help me with what I learned from my rehab and put it into practice. Living with Stroke had many areas to educate us on stroke. It was the only virtual course that I knew was offered. I gasped when I heard March of Dimes was no longer able to offer Living with Stroke. That was hard to swallow, that other stroke survivors could not get help. We now know that March of Dimes has developed a new stroke education and self-management program, and you will hear about that later in the webinar. The things that are taught in the education programs are the survivors you meet, and absolutely they're pivotal in these programs. Let's share some lessons I've learned from my own recovery attending the program. My stroke is invisible. 90% of my difficulties are cognitive. I have lost my executive function and fine motor skills in my dominant left hand. Deficits of executive function. Well, here's a few. Trouble making decisions, even small ones. I have difficulty planning and organizing thoughts. Forgetting what you're doing in the middle of a task. Getting stuck on one way of doing something, and even if it's not working, and struggling to switch between tasks. Most survivors find workarounds for their deficiencies. These workarounds are found through what they understand through the programs. For me, I wanted to work on achieving my goals, and through the program, I learned to chunk every task into very small sections to comprehend and do the steps to complete the task. This is just one lesson I learned. The camaraderie we made through the program's participants may have been one of the highlights of the program. During the 8 weeks, we got to see how each other worked through their goals. It was very essential to pick up new ways of doing tasks from others, their workarounds. Even after program was finished, our group stayed together and called ourselves Stroke Champions. We got together on our own Zoom meeting every month after the program was finished. We each made goals every month and checked to see how everybody did on them. We kept that up for about a year and a half. Now I know about an education and skill development program called Living Life to the Full that I have also completed. This program was developed by Canadian Mental Health Association in British Columbia and helps people learn strategies to manage all sorts of stress and mood issues. March of Dimes offers this program to their clients, and I highly, highly recommend it. Through the Living with Life program, it really brought to light the importance of chunking my goals into small pieces that are achievable. It helped me understand anxiety and anger and let me think about what I might do in those situations. It gave me strategies such as meditation. This program also has a great component of being with other stroke survivors and learning from them. I wish there would be more discussion about grief, loss, and denial. I worked very hard to overcome denial that this journey can take you on. Slowly, I started to accept the truth, coming to the realization that I wouldn't be returning to my original 1.0 self. So why don't we just take a little ride? If anybody's got a piece of paper in front of them, grab it. The piece of paper that you're going to grab is version 1.0. This is you, the piece of paper, crisp, clean, straight, flat, perfect. You're perfect. Now take that paper and crumble it up. Crumble it up into a ball. Really tight. Try to crumble it up. Feel the contours of hills and the valleys in it. Now take this piece of paper and flatten it out. No, really. Really try to flatten this piece of paper out. Oh, wow. You notice you can't flatten it out. Huh. Well, when you try to straighten it out again, you'll notice that's called stroke recovery. Feel the lines and the highs and the lows in that piece of paper. Embrace the truth that you can't return to your previous state, but relish in the ramifications of your new self. This revelation took my thoughts away from denial and focused on the fact that I was now a new and improved version of resilient Doug 2.0. I have discovered and embraced new preferences and activities I had not known before. Through a journey of self-discovery, I have achieved an appreciation of the new 2.0, me, and I try to be kind to myself. Am I back to normal? What is back to normal after a stroke or a brain injury? I've learned to love Doug 2.0 every day. I get excited at my progression and look forward to all my virtual support groups. I hope that all the stroke survivors listening today will consider joining one of March of Dimes education and self-management courses. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Doug. That was a very honest and accurate portrayal or rendition of your recovery, and we appreciate you sharing all your thoughts and experiences. We'd now like to introduce Lindsay Scriven. She is an after-stroke coordinator, lives in Toronto, and covers the entire province of Ontario. She has been at March of Dimes Canada for almost 15 years. Lindsay has a background in special education and physical rehabilitation. And she has also been an integral member of the Life After Stroke program working group and is excited to be facilitating the pilot launch of this program. Just give me a second here and I will share my screen. One second. Okay.
Thank you, Nadia. So again, my name is Lindsay, and I'm going to be telling you about the Life After Stroke program that has been a labor of love for over the past year, and it's an education and self-management program. So March of Dimes Canada, in collaboration with the Toronto Stroke Networks, is proud to introduce Life After Stroke, a stroke education and self-management program designed to empower individuals in their stroke recovery journey. This evidence-informed program offers a series of topic-specific interactive modules. The modules were developed by a co-design working group, and the content includes expert-led video segments and opportunities for peer-to-peer discussion within a co-facilitation model. So we had several expert contributions for people who did the videos for us, as well as people who reviewed all of the modules that we had created. So we had neurology and physiatrist rehabilitation professionals. We had social workers, researchers in mobility, exercise, and self-management, nutritionists and sexual well-being experts, and finally, individuals with lived experience addressing topics such as mood, return to work, and the value of stroke education and peer support. So the Life After Stroke program, it's a highly interactive 10-week facilitator-led virtual program that's designed to support stroke survivors in their stroke knowledge and in developing self-management skills. This program is for individuals who have transitioned from hospital to community since having their stroke. So participants share experiences, receive peer support, and enhance motivation for change through education and discussion. Participants will focus on creating personalized goals and action plans each week that focus on their unique needs and changing behaviors that help to prevent a secondary stroke. So I think this picture is a great depiction of, secondary stroke prevention being in the middle. This is the main goal of the program. And it is achieved by providing education, peer support, weekly goal setting, and then the main goal is to help provide that self-management piece. So this program is offered in virtual sessions right now, and the virtual sessions run for 2 hours once a week. And each session is focused on a topic that's related to stroke recovery. The program is led by trained facilitators, including March of Dimes Canada staff and persons with lived experience of stroke. And this national program is open to individuals affected by stroke all across Canada. So basic eligibility screening is conducted by after stroke coordinators just to ensure that participants are well suited for the program. So the program delivery, the Toronto Stroke Network's Guide for Stroke Recovery is our main resource for this program. Participants who enroll also receive a participant manual, and the manual has a copy of all the session slides with room for them to take notes, so you can refer back to the information after the session ends. And each session includes information on a topic directly from the Guide for Stroke Recovery. Time for questions. Each week we do goal setting and obviously have a lot of time for discussions and that peer support piece. So we are currently in our pilot, and that launched in June and will go until August 2025. So in our pilot, we have 8 participants, and it's myself and Nadia who are leading the pilot, along with our co-facilitator who is a stroke survivor. And once it's completed, we're going to be gathering feedback and evaluation results. And then we'll convene our small working group to review evaluation and inform the changes that are required. And hopefully the launch 2 cohorts will happen in fall 2025. So that's something very exciting to look forward to. So we'd like to have a very big thank you to our donors who made this program possible. So we were supported by an educational grant from AbbVie, and additional thanks goes to Click Health. So the last part here is how to contact us. If you're interested in this program, if you're interested in Living Life to the Full that Doug mentioned, or any of the other programs that you might have heard about in this webinar today, there are many ways you can contact us. Please call us on our stroke support line, and that's the number right there. You will speak to someone live. Also, you can go check out our website, afterstroke.ca, for a lot more information, or you can email us and someone will respond to your email.
Thank you very much, Lindsay, and to all of our panelists today. As I mentioned previously, this recording will be uploaded to our Ask an Expert YouTube channel and will be available to view in about a week. The slides for this webinar and the recording link will also be shared with all attendees. I'll stop sharing now and we can see if we have any questions in the Q&A to get to.
And we absolutely do. First of all, thank you very much to all of our panelists. Great information, wonderful job. First question, what is glucose intolerance in diabetes? And that was directed to Dr. Sakip. I'm going to say it wrong. I
Yeah, sure.
apologize.
Thanks, Mel. So I guess glucose intolerance can happen after diabetes, which I guess is indicated by a continued or worsening inability for individuals to regulate their blood sugar levels effectively, um, even after the initial diabetes diagnosis, I suppose. So generally, glucose intolerance is a condition where the body doesn't properly regulate blood sugar, leading to levels of blood glucose that are higher than normal. And it typically is a condition that is a risk factor for type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, or other complications. And just for general information, the target fasting blood glucose is between 4 and 7 millimoles per liter in individuals. That's fasting glucose. So after diabetes, I guess it's a continued worsening or inability of the individual to regulate their blood sugar levels effectively. And typically, in discussions with your medical doctor, you'd be able to identify what your target levels are and how to effectively manage that intolerance. And just by I'll just let everyone, I'm not a medical professional. And so if anyone has detailed questions about things like this and glucose intolerance and whatnot, probably be best to talk to your family doctor.
And another one for you. That's great. What is your best advice for living well post-stroke?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say, a large part of my discussion and my work really focuses on an individual's ability to be an active participant in their own healthcare. Self-management is how we coin it. So be a very active participant in the management of your health, and do your best to manage the behavioral as well as the metabolic risk factors, in particular physical activity and blood pressure. Blood pressure management or high blood pressure is probably the number one stroke risk factor. And so things that we could do to manage our blood pressure, so things like medication management and adherence, as well as improving some of the health behaviors that affect blood pressure, I think will go a long way to reducing a stroke risk. And one of the most important self-management skills, so if you're going to manage your activity, if you're going to manage your blood pressure, is a skill called self-monitoring. And so monitoring your activity or monitoring your blood pressure. And the thought here is that if people can see how they're doing, it might provide them with motivation to improve upon previous values or measurements, as well as alert individuals to any outlying values or measurements that might require a visit to the health professional.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, and sorry, Shell, a couple other things. What's also important is for individuals is, to maintain your desired activities, participation in your family life, social roles, so on and so forth, as well as, participating in the March of Dimes After Stroke program, I think is one of the very few resources that individuals, community-based resources that individuals have access to that are available after discharge from hospital.
Wonderful. Good. Thank you. For Jazzbeer, there's a comment. Well said. Be kind to yourself and give yourself the same grace as you would to others. So that kind of really resonated, which is fantastic. The Living with Life program Doug mentioned, is this available in Newfoundland? Yes. Is it available across Canada? Do we know?
Yeah, I can hop in. It's Living Life to the Full. So March of Dimes Canada does offer this program. So you would have to be connected with an after stroke coordinator, and your after stroke coordinator can put you on the wait list. So it is quite a popular program. So we do have, not too big of a wait list, but you would just ask your coordinator to put you on the wait list, and you would be contacted in the fall or winter, I would say, for the next session. And it's offered virtually, so anyone can join.
Okay, great. Another one regarding both programs, the brand new one as well as Living Life to the Full. Are they suitable for people who have aphasia?
So we are doing the pilot now, and um, our materials are not, I guess, what you would say aphasia friendly, but this is something we are going to work on for future sessions. So, part of the programs is communicating. So I would say as long as there's some way that you are able to communicate and participate, I think it would be fine.
Okay. Jasbir, did CNIB help your sight problem?
So CNIB could have. So let me figure out how to answer this. So I don't think I needed anything that CNIB could help me, but yes, they did give me. There are multiple canes that I can use. Because my biggest problem was when I was in an airport, I couldn't see people coming from my right side and people are going in all different directions. So I would bang into people. So now I have a cane, which actually the person from CNAB was very kind, offered to come into my community, work with me so I know how to use the cane. So now I can use the cane. It's white at the end and they can see that I'm coming. So that's basically what I wanted to make sure that people can see me coming because I can't see them coming. So yeah, so CNIB was very helpful in that.
Okay, fantastic. And just as an aside, CNIB is now Vision Loss Canada. Will access to the Life After Stroke program be restricted to people who have recently had a stroke? Is there a time frame for when the stroke happened?
So right now in our pilot, most people are 3 months to 1 year post-stroke, but that it still would be a great program for anyone at any part of their stroke journey. But for the pilot, we wanted to have people who were pretty, you know, in the beginning of their stroke recovery journey. But that's something we can definitely look at down the line, and I think anyone would benefit from the program.
Okay, fantastic. There are some questions on how to get an after stroke coordinator. So that would be through our website, our phone line, and then an intake would be done and get connected that way, correct? Okay. And then because this is a national program, anybody across Canada would be able to join. Alrighty. Sounds good. Loving the personal stories. Looking forward to getting a copy of the slides. How do you manage having conversations with multiple people? One-on-one is not a problem. So that's a pretty good question.
For me, I get overwhelmed and overstimulated very easily. So I can understand where the person's talking here and asking him this question. It's a great question. Um, because there's so much conversation going on, a lot of times I have to remove myself and kind of back off and and kind of like reset myself to the conversations and stuff that are going on. So basically, you almost have to train yourself to listen to one person only, and but it gets better in time after time. It gets better.
Another one for you, Doug. Your epic approach to embracing your new you is inspiring. How do you feel that your executive function has limited your return to work? And what workarounds do you use to manage your moods in your understanding that you will not return to work?
Oh, that was a tough one. And I can't remember to the life of me. Somebody might remember. I went to, I, I thought I was going to go back to work. So I had no idea that I wouldn't be going back to work. So they sent me for a psych assessment, I believe it was called. And I did it, and it was like 6 hours long. And I came out of that thinking I aced it. I came home and go, oh, that was easy. I did it well, blah, blah, blah. And then when they brought the results out, I failed miserably. So that's when they told me that I would not be going back to work in a managed position at GM. So that was given to my long-term disability people, and I was put on medical. I was medically retired then, so I was medically retired at age 57. So yeah, it hurt. Workarounds for that. Be honest with you, I am probably involved in at least, I'm going to say a minimum of 10 after stroke community self of support groups. That's through March of Dimes, Brain Institute of York Region, Dale Brain. There's all kinds of support for us, and it's all out there.
Wonderful. Thank you. Lindsay, is there an ideal time to be part of a 10-week education program?
I think the ideal time would be, as soon as possible post-stroke. I mean, when people come back to the community, they're often quite busy with, appointments, medical appointments, and outpatient rehabilitation. So, perhaps once that is over, I would say that's the ideal time to sort of join the group. But that being said, I think, like I said before, anyone would benefit from this program. But just I think at the beginning, people we find don't have the knowledge. So having that education sooner, I would think would be more beneficial.
Fantastic. For Dr. Sakakibara, why is the concept of setting goals so important in changing lifestyle?
It's a great question. So I think if individuals set longer term goals, they have something to work towards. And if people have longer term goals and something to work towards, they could create shorter term action plans that they can readily develop, readily succeed in achieving and continue with those shorter term action plans to achieve that longer term goal. But I think, if people have those longer term goals that they want to achieve, say like 6 months to a year, 2 years that they want to achieve. And once they've achieved that goal, to continue setting these longer term goals, I think it just goes towards an individual's ability for behavior change in general.
Wonderful. Thank you. Also for you, is there a possibility that post-stroke leg spasms will eventually resolve? That
Ooh,
would be towards a medical doctor.
that's probably to a medical doctor or a physiotherapist. Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds good. For Jasbir, how can we get better at spreading the word about after stroke and the programs we offer?
You mean March of Dimes offers?
Yes.
I think what I find that because of my condition, I was in Lower Mainland. I was in 4 different hospitals, and none of the hospitals gave me any package on stroke recovery. Each of them knew that I had had a stroke, and there was no information. So I think that's kind of where it starts from. Make sure that the patient when they're discharged to go home, give them a packet, give the family some information, who to contact. And I don't know if there's a possibility to ask the person or the family if they can be referred to March of Dimes, so somebody from, because that's what my therapist did. My work, career counselor said, hey, talk to your mental therapist. She said, let me refer you to March. She referred me, and then somebody from March of Dimes called me. I didn't have to do anything. But this was almost 6-7 months later. Like I went to work 6 months after, and this was a couple months into, almost 8 months later. So if somebody could have started way early, knew about me, and I knew about them, I think that would be very effective and very efficient in getting to people together.
So almost like an automatic referral from hospital.
Almost like an automatic referral, or give people the option, like, here is a packet. If you don't want the automatic referral, here's somebody to call for, or go online and check.
Okay, fantastic. All right. There are a couple of questions in the Q&A that we will answer separately. If anybody else has something just to finish up, if you could put it in the Q&A so we can get it answered, that would be fantastic. I was introduced to March of Dimes via post-stroke team that came out from the local hospital. You are amazing, and I thank you. So that's great, great feedback. We'll just give it another minute to see if anybody else has anything that they are typing. Lots of comments that this has been extremely inspirational as well as very informative, which is great. Okay, it doesn't look like there's anything else in the Q&A, so I will let Nadia close things up, but this has been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. And we thank everyone for attending today's session. As we mentioned, the recording of this video will be uploaded to the Ask an Expert YouTube channel, and a link to the recording as well as the slides from this session will also be sent out to the attendees via email. And we thank you very much for attending, and I thank all the panelists for their time and for their wonderful contributions to this webinar.